Hi there everyone, so today's recipe is no egg cookies. Now this particular recipe I've been mucking about with for well over a year now. For the last couple of months it's been pretty much settled, so I think I've got it bang on just the way I like it. Couple of caveats when making this one is if you change the diameter of your cookie mixture once you've rolled it out, or you change the actual size of your cutter, you end up with quite substantially different different textured cookies. And depending on the way you like it, you might want to do that. Make it flatter or make it smaller, and they're much firmer, much more biscuity like. And if you leave your cookie cutter too large, they're more chewy, doughy, softy like. I think I've got the mixture of crunch versus chew just perfect with the way I've got the recipe set up now. But as I say, it has been a year, maybe longer, since I've been actually experimenting and playing and tweaking and playing with this recipe. And I'm very, very happy with it. Two versions I do a choc chip one, and the one that we're doing today is the crystallized ginger one. So if you like these, I might well do the chocolate chip one separately at some point, but today we're cracking in with a set of crystallized ginger no egg cookies. So let's get on to this. So the first thing we're looking to do is to measure 125 grams of light brown sugar. Now you could just use the same brown sugar throughout, so double up on the light, or when we get to it double up on the brown, but I tend to find using half and half gives that best flavour balance with these cookies. And because we are using half and half, that means also measure out 125 grams of dark brown sugar. And we're also looking for 250 grams of vegan butter. Now the vegan butter I use by choice is this one by Flora here. You can either use the salted or the unsalted, choice is yours. But it's important, it's the Flora stuff. It seems to operate exactly the same as dairy butter, to the exact same standards, to the same recipes, so it's a good choice. Now if you're using it straight out of the fridge, bung it in your microwave for 15 seconds just to take some of the chill off it. That way it will cream up really nicely and it's not too firm. Over 15 seconds you start risking getting it runny. Maximum you can tend to get away with is 30, but the ideal is 15 seconds in the microwave just to take the chill off of it. As you can see, when you press your fingers onto the surface of the butter, there's enough deformity going on to say you've brought it up to high enough temperature for you to cream it nice and successfully. So add that to both your sugars, and then we're going to cream it in your mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, you're going to have to beat it together with a spatula until you've got creamed fully. And if you are doing it in a stand mixer, make sure it's a beater attachment that you're using, not a dough hook or anything like that. I've been there, I've done it because I was stupid, but use a actual beater attachment to get your dough work together. As it would be ridiculously tedious to show you me beating all this together in real time, we're going to cut to a little bit of high speed just so we can get to the end product. But you're going to be beating this at a medium sort of high speed. Once it's nearly fully done, you can really crank up the speed and just get the last bit brought together. But to start off, medium high is where you're going to start off, and then we get our end product as we see just shortly. Before we get to how your creamed sugar will actually look, I just want to add, don't be afraid to stop your mixer part way through and clean your actual beater down with a spatula, just in case there's any detritus stuck to it. It just helps it blend together better if you give it that wee stop in the middle and give it a clean. Now that the sugar is creamed, it's time to add the rest of our dry ingredients. So first up, we're going to add 400 grams of plain flour, which we're going to stick in the mixer and mix together. And then we're going to follow that up with 1 teaspoon of salt, which you can either measure into a separate ramekin or put it straight in your mixer. I'm doing the ramekin just for ease of the video. Same again with the baking powder. This is just for ease of the video. You can measure these straight into your stand mixer at this stage, but the baking powder, 2 teaspoons is what you're looking for. Crystallized ginger, we're looking for 30 grams for a mild ginger flavour throughout your biscuit that's not overpowering. If you really like strong ginger, you can double it up, but it then sort of overpowers. And we need to chop this into small chunks about 5mm in size. And for ease of preparation, it is worthwhile chopping up your ginger before you're at the stage of when you need to add it.
But you can wait, because it's not going to do any harm to the rest of the ingredients if they sit there waiting for the ginger to go in. So it's optional either way around. I do like preparing everything ahead of when I need to use it though, and that way it's just as I get to the stage, I bung it in the mixer. But do whatever way suits your workflow. And now that the rest of the dry ingredients are prepared, we're looking to add them to the stand mixer or a mixing bowl if you're doing it by hand. Doesn't matter which order you're adding it in, as long as they all go in. So that's the salt, the baking powder, the crystallized ginger and the flour all need to go in at the mixer at this point. Then we're going to turn it on and bring it all together before we start adding the rest of the ingredients, which is our wet ingredients that are still to be added. And now that we're adding our wet ingredients, just leave the mixer running and start to add them. So first up, we're going to add the vanilla, which we're looking to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla essence. We're then going to repeat the process again whilst your mixer is still running with 2 teaspoons of orange flavouring. Now, the orange flavouring is optional, but I personally think and believe that it rounds out the flavour of the cookies. You don't need to use orange. You could use a different extract if you want one that maybe ties up the nut milk you're using. It's again worth experimenting, but I think I've nailed it with this little combination of vanilla and orange and the ginger. So make mine first and then experiment and tell me what you've done and what you've got. So once both of those flavourings are added, we're going to progress on and we're going to add our nut milks. Options, any nut milk that you prefer. My personal favourite is I forgot its name, hazelnut. But unfortunately, Morrison's and Asda have stopped selling own brand hazelnut, and the actual branded stuff's about twice the price. It's not worth that much more for the flavour, so the almond works really, really well here as well. So again, experiment with the flavours of your nut milks. It does alter slightly the flavours of the cookies, so it is worth playing with. But as I say, my personal favourite, the hazelnut. The almond is still gorgeous in it as well though. And again, it's important that the nut milk goes in 1 teaspoon at a time, just so it mixes through the dough. You may need to stop before the 6 teaspoons are added. I very, very rarely ever have, and that's probably come down to not quite exact measurements in the rest of the recipe, but it's just watching the dough as you put it together. But 6 teaspoons, 99 out of 100 times, is the exact amount you want. But just that 1 teaspoon at a time, so you can actually watch the dough as you bring it together, because you don't want it sloppy and wet. You want a nice firm dough, but not sloppy. Firm enough so that it actually sticks to your beater at the end, which you'll see here when I go and turn it off and lift it. So that's the exact texture we're looking for. Not sloppier, not any firmer. And now we can measure out 150 millilitres of water, and we're going to put that in an appropriate container that's heat proof in the bottom of your oven, or if your oven actually has a Steambake oven function, you'll put it in the pan part of your oven, which does the Steambake. An actual pan of water in the bottom does the same sort of idea. And if you're using that, you're going to set it to fan bake, and if you're using an actual steam oven, you set it to Steambake. Cutter size, I found, to get the best texture and mouthfeel where you've got the outer crunch but inner chewy of your cookie, is between a 6.5 and a 7 centimetre cutter. If you go smaller, you tend to find that your cookies end up far too firm, far too crunchy, more like a ginger nut. And if you go much larger, they end up too soft and too chewy for the cooking times. So the 6.5, 7 centimetres, I find, gives that bang on crunchy to chewy texture. And now we're going to take a little sprinkling of plain flour and we're going to scatter it on a surface, mix it about by hand just so we get a nice floured surface for our dough to be put on, and we're going to roll that dough out. We're looking to roll it somewhere in approximately the 7 to 9 millimetre thickness range. It might be slightly thicker at some points, it might be slightly thinner at some points, but it's that sort of ballpark evenness that we're looking for to give us the right sort of size of cookie to go with that size of cutter, again, so we can get the crunchiness versus chewy texture we're looking for. Because we're looking for that chewier centre but that crunchier outer, and that's exactly what I find you get if you stick to those sort of parameters of the cutter, 6.5 to 7 centimetres and roughly 7 to 9 millimetres on the depth that we're going to roll this out to. You'll see when I come to cut it and I'll turn it on its side, you'll see the sort of sizes we're looking at. So first off, take your cutter, dump it in your flour just so it's not going to stick to your cookie dough, and then we're going to cut out our slices. You'll see, as I've already mentioned already, the sort of diameter we're looking for, or the depth we're looking for, that sort of 7 to 9 millimeters. This is on the thicker side, so that's about the 9 millimeter thickness there, and you can go as thin as about 7 millimeters. You really don't want to be going thicker, you really don't want to be going much thinner, because again, it alters how your final cookies are going to turn out. Too thin and you end up with them more like a biscuit, more crunchy throughout, which is fine, still tastes absolutely gorgeous. And too thick, you leave them far too chewy, or at least too chewy for my taste. You might like them that way chewy. Again, it's worth playing with to get the cookies exactly the way you like them. But again, as I've repeated, I think I've nailed crunchiness versus chewiness with sticking within these parameters. Now, because this is a double batch of cookies, you're going to need 3 baking trays with silicone liner on it. If you're not using silicone liner, you'll need to dust them with a little bit of flour just to help stop your cookies sticking. But I love using these silicone liners. I use them all the time with just about everything, if not everything I cook on a baking tray. Now, you're going to between 9 and 10 of these cookies to a full-sized baking sheet. And you need to leave the separation and spacing because these will spread out a bit as they cook, so you don't want them all merging together into a mangled mess if you use too few trays. So it's a double batch, this size of recipe, so we're talking 9 or 10, as I say, to a sheet with this amount of separation required. And after you've cut out all you can from the first time you've rolled it out, just bring the dough back together. Sprinkle a little bit more flour on your work surface, again just to prevent that dough from sticking. Roll it out again to the same thickness, cut them all out again to the same diameter of cooker, put them on the silicone baking tray, rinse and repeat until you've got absolutely no dough left. So it just means rolling it out a couple of times, not a hassle. If you've not got a lot of dough left at the very, very last one, just push it into the circle cutter itself rather than trying to roll it out, so you end up with your cookie shape. That's the one that ends up a little bit too thick or a little bit too thin oftentimes, but hey, nobody's perfect. And to a preheated oven set to 160 degrees Celsius, either set to steam bake with the water in the vessel at the bottom, or set to fan bake with a separate water container that's heat proof and oven proof with your water in the very bottom of the oven. We're going to cook the cookies for 14 minutes. And because this is a double batch, we want everything cooked evenly. Halfway through, we're going to switch the positions of the top and the bottom cookies just so that everything's crispy, nothing's too doughy, because if you don't do that, you risk the top ones being too crispy, the bottom ones being too doughy. So halfway through, flip them round, just be nice and quick so you don't lose all the steam that you've generated in your oven, or not all of the steam because you will lose a chunk, and cook it for the rest of the 7 minutes. And once your 14 minutes are up, we're going to take them out of the oven and we're going to transfer them to a wire cooling rack, and we're going to leave them there for at least 10 minutes. You really need to let them set up. If you can wait longer, leave them longer, but they're cookies and they're nice and fast. And the part of the reason we make cookies is because they're nice and fast is because we want to eat them very, very soon. But please, leave them at least the 10 minutes to cool, but a little bit longer is preferable.
Cookie Monster! Cookies! 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 Cookies. Goddamn lovely. Goddamn lovely. You can really taste the orange in with the vanilla, in with the ginger. Absolutely beautiful. If you're looking for a stronger hint of ginger, you can add maybe 50%, even 100% more of the ginger if you're really looking for a real strong ginger hit. But I think the blend here is perfect. I think more, as much as it gives you that ginger hit, it starts masking some of the other flavours. But experiment with it a wee bit if you want, but I think this is just about the perfect way of doing it. Cookie Monster! Bye folks, take care.